Hello everybody, thanks so much for being here. One of the amazing members asked a very important, beneficial question, which is a very common problem to have when trying to change our relationship with alcohol or lower our alcohol intake. And the question was, how do I change my mindset, or how do I go about going home at the end of the day and being really excited or really wanting to have a glass of wine, to going home at the end of the day and really not wanting to have a glass of wine. Okay, so how do we create that change? Now, here's the thing. We all logically know not to have a glass of wine, or to have more wine, or to have less wine. What I mean by that is we get it logically. We're like, we think, well, I could just drink less. I could just not have a wine. We're logically getting it, but long-term change doesn't occur if we don't emotionally get it. So I want to give you the key on how to emotionally get this and the change that has to happen and to occur. When it comes to how do I go from loving a glass of wine to not loving a glass of wine, we need to flip a switch in our thinking. It's a fundamental flip that must be made, and it does require us to do some work. There's no magic pills here that I can give you. So logically we get it, we don't get it emotionally. What we're not getting emotionally is that we are stacking more pleasure to a glass of wine than pleasure not having a glass of wine, right? And what this means is, in life, through human behavior, behavioral profiling, we realize and we understand that we only ever do anything in life for one or two reasons. And those reasons are, we either do things in life to build pleasure, or we do things in life to avoid pain. So we only ever do things to build pleasure or to avoid pain. Now, when it comes to a behavioral pattern like this, whereas we go home and we want a glass of wine, if we're logically trying to say that we don't want to do that and we consistently keep doing it anyway, it's simply because there's more pleasure with having the wine than there is pleasure without having it, which also means that there's more pain around not having the wine. Okay, so now we get that bit of content. How do we actually change that? What we must do is we must start stacking massive amounts of pleasure to each time we go home and we don't have a wine, or each time we go home have a wine and we don't have the second, whatever the goal is for you. But the question was, how do I not have the wine at the end of the day? So what we want to do is, as we go home that evening, instead of just saying, I'm not going to have a wine, right? Think about it like this. If you just take candy away from a baby, the baby's probably going to get upset. It's the same thing, metaphorically speaking, here. But what we want to do is replace it. And I'm not saying replace wine with beer or replace wine with sugar. It's not about that. It's about replacing it with the pleasure that we get. So you're going to wish that there was a different way, but this is the way for long-term success. You're going to go home, and instead of having a wine, you're not going to have a wine. You have water, have sparkling mineral water, have something else. But whilst you're having something else, and that something else could be sitting on the couch or spending time with the kids or the family, just something other than a wine, whilst you're doing that activity, you want to consciously tell yourself that it feels good. Okay? You want to consciously stack pleasure. For example, even if it doesn't, okay, and I'll tell you why. You want to consciously tell yourself, this feels fantastic not to have a wine. It feels fantastic to have clean, crisp, cold water. Oh, this feels great to have sparkling mineral water with lemon and lime. Now, the thing that we've really got to understand here is it doesn't need to feel right? The law of attraction and the power of manifestation really happens because what we are doing is we are selling ourselves an idea that's not actually true. It doesn't have to be true, right? So we are selling ourselves the idea that it feels fantastic when we are sober or when we're not drinking. Now, in the beginning, that's actually going to be what's called a bit of a bullshit story or a lie. It's not actually true. You still feel better with the alcohol. That's okay. I'm not here to lie to you. We want to consistently show up and consciously tell ourselves the bullshit story that it feels fantastic not to drink. And when we want to do that over and over and over again, and I tell you what's going to happen. The pain-pleasure principle when it comes to alcohol will switch for you, which means you will have a switch which goes, it'll happen for you. And it sounds something like this. The switch will go from, I feel pleasure from a glass of wine, to I feel more pleasure without the wine, which means it'll actually become more painful in some way, shape or form for you to have the wine than to not. Now that might not sink in for you just yet. That's okay. Trust the process, trust the system. Set yourself 10 or 15 days minimum to consciously go home each night, either put down the glass of wine or don't have the glass of wine. And when you're doing it, don't come from a place of just, oh, I'm not doing it because I'm supposed to, right? It's just not going to work like that. We've got to come from the mindset and the place of it's feeling great. It's feeling great. Now, this is if you're after long-term change, because anybody can use willpower to say, I'm not going to touch drink anymore. I'm not going to drink anymore. And that's okay, and that's great if it works for you. However, I would rather, if it's okay, for you not to go 30, 40 years and still think, yes, I'm never going to touch a drink again. You know, we want to come from a place of freedom, I believe, and a place of choice. That's what this group's all about. It's developing a relationship with alcohol you love. So, for example, you know, a lot of you know my story. I used to be addicted to drinking and gambling, and I couldn't have more than 2 drinks without getting absolutely shit-faced. I never thought it was possible. I actually find it more painful now to come home and have a beer. So guess what? I don't anymore. It's off-putting. I don't enjoy it. There's no pleasure there, right? And that only happened from applying what I'm teaching you now and consistently showing up. And even when I felt like having a drink, I would not have a drink, and I'd tell myself, it was kind of annoying sometimes, I'd tell myself, it feels good not to drink, it feels good not to drink. Until all of a sudden, 30, 40, 50 days after repetitious routine of that, I came home one day and I thought, the last thing I feel like right now is alcohol. And it was a massive turning point for me with my relationship with alcohol. I trust this answers your question. Please comment below any questions you have, because I'd love to go into more detail on this, either through the comments section, or if there's any other questions or clarification you're after, just comment below and there's a chance I'll post another live video. I absolutely love serving you in this group. Just reading a couple of comments. Hey guys, great to see you all here. So, Simon, what do you mean by that? Let me know what you mean by that. When you say, I'd like to apply that to a social occasion that is focused on drinking, how do I do that? If you can just clarify below for me. What do you mean by you'd like to apply that to a social occasion that is focused on drinking? You may be off the line now, that's okay. Comment below anyway. I will let you know that from what I've read there, when it comes to stacking pleasure to social occasions and not drinking, it's the exact same principle. So what I mean by that is I used to... Great, so how do I avoid it? Yeah. So you've just asked, if my friends are all drinking, how do I avoid it? So first things first. If you don't have the certainty within yourself to say no, if you know that every time you go out that you're just going to give in and you're just going to start drinking anyway, even if you say that you don't want to, then you've got to do a stint of sobriety. And I can tell you why that's important, because you've got to develop the self-certainty to put yourself first, right? Now, another way of going on, if you don't want to do a stint of sobriety, and what I mean by is removing yourself from alcohol situations and occasions, what you want to do is each time you go out and you don't drink, you want to stack pleasure. It's the same principle. And it's not going to feel good. Like I would just say, expect to feel anxious, sad, overwhelmed, fearful, outside your comfort zone. You know, if you've always been someone that's drinking when they're out, it's going to be outside your comfort zone. Okay, so what I mean by that is start driving to events and being really concise and clear about what it is that you want to achieve. So when people ask you to drink or want to give you a glass of wine or champagne or beers or whatever it is, you're just very clear about what it is that you've set out to achieve. Now, when it starts to become uncomfortable, you can stick it out, or like myself, when it became uncomfortable, I would literally just leave. I wouldn't say anything to anyone. I didn't feel like I had to prove it to them. It was my fucking journey. And I would go and get in the car, and on the way home, even if I felt like, oh, I really want to go out, or oh, I just want to go back and have drinks, or I should have stayed, anything like that, even through all of that, which is ego thinking, I would say to myself, but it does feel great, I'm driving home. It does feel great, I'm driving home. It does feel great, I'm driving home. And I'd play some music. Often I'd go and buy myself like a chocolate milkshake. I remember doing this a lot, chocolate milkshake from McDonald's. Sometimes it was 12 a.m., 3 a.m. You know, just wanted to do something else that, look, at the end of the day, I'm not out there drinking. Yeah, go and treat yourself, grab a chocolate, get some ice cream. Fuck, it's not about being perfect. And then wake up the next morning and stack a lot of pleasure to that morning. Because when you can start to stack so much pleasure to feeling sober the next morning, guess what? 3, 4, 6 weeks, 3 months, 6 months down the track, your subconscious mind is literally going to be driving and telling you what to do in life. And those actions are going to be around, don't go out and get pissed. Because it likes to feel pleasure. It loves to. I trust that answers your question. This live's gone a little bit longer than it was going to, but I've loved rocking out. If you have any more questions, just comment below and I'll make sure you're looked after. Thanks everyone. Have a good night.